Amsterdam was built below sea level on wooden piles in a swamp and required continuous collective pumping to prevent it from drowning. The city that invented the financial instruments of modern capitalism was simultaneously engaged in the most continuous act of collective infrastructure maintenance in European history. A people who learned that survival required collective investment in shared infrastructure applied that lesson to everything, including the joint stock company, the tradable share, and the stock exchange, the three inventions that made Amsterdam the financial capital of the world in the 17th century, and that still govern how every public corporation on Earth raises money. The Dutch Republic's specific commercial position in 1600 CE was the product of geography's constraints, and the specific institutional responses those constraints had produced. The Netherlands had no significant natural resources. It had no major mineral deposits, no large forests, no productive agricultural plains. What it had, the mouth of the Rhine, access to the North Sea, a fishing tradition, and the specific organizational culture of a people who had spent centuries building and maintaining dikes, polders, and windmill systems together. The specific institutional lesson of Dutch water management: collective investment creates value that individual investment cannot. Applying that lesson to commerce produced the joint stock company, the specific financial innovation whose consequences are still running in every stock market on Earth. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, founded on March 20, 1602, was the most consequential corporate institution in history. Its specific innovations: any person could buy a share of the VOC's future profits. That share was a physical document, a certificate. The certificate could be sold to another person at any time on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. The company's management was separate from its owners, the shareholders. Management made decisions. Shareholders received profits. Neither needed the other to be physically present, personally known, or individually responsible for the company's debts. The Joint Stock Limited Liability Company, the template for every public corporation on Earth, was invented in Amsterdam in 1602. Its peak market capitalization adjusted for modern values, approximately $7.9 trillion. Apple's peak valuation, approximately $3 trillion. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the Beurs van Hendrik de Keyser, opened in 1603, was the world's first formal stock exchange. Its specific institutional function: a physical location where VOC shares could be bought and sold between willing parties at negotiated prices. The innovation was not the price negotiation. That happened in every market. The innovation was the continuous price discovery mechanism, because shares were traded daily by large numbers of participants. The price at any moment reflected the aggregate assessment of the VOC's value by everyone in the market simultaneously. This was new. It had never existed before. The continuous price discovery mechanism that the Amsterdam Stock Exchange created in 1603 is the same mechanism that runs the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, and every other equity market in the world in 2026. The Bank of Amsterdam, the Wisselbank, founded in 1609, was the world's first central bank, providing three specific functions that no institution had previously offered at this scale: a stable deposit currency based on standardized silver, a clearing mechanism that allowed merchants to transfer funds between accounts without physically moving coins, and a lender of last resort function that provided liquidity to the Amsterdam money market. The Wisselbank's specific consequence: Amsterdam became the cheapest and most efficient place to conduct large-scale international commerce, because the transaction costs of currency risk and physical coin transfer were eliminated. The Bank of England, founded in 1694, was explicitly modeled on the Wisselbank. Every central bank in the world traces its institutional architecture to Amsterdam's 1609 innovation. Tulip mania, the world's first documented speculative bubble, occurred in Amsterdam between 1634 and 1637. At the bubble's peak in February 1637, a single Semper Augustus tulip bulb was sold for approximately 10 times an average Amsterdam craftsman's annual salary, equivalent to the price of a house on the Amsterdam Canal. The specific mechanism: Amsterdam's financial innovations had created futures contracts, agreements to buy or sell an asset at a specified price on a future date. Speculators began trading tulip bulb futures, buying contracts for bulbs that did not yet exist, at prices that reflected not the bulb's actual value but the market's expectation of further price increases. The bubble collapsed in February 1637 when buyers simply stopped appearing. The same financial infrastructure that funded global trade had produced the world's first speculative crash. The Dutch Golden Age, approximately 1600 to 1672, was the most concentrated period of commercial, artistic, and intellectual achievement in proportion to population size in European history. Amsterdam's population grew from approximately 30,000 in 1560 to approximately 200,000 by 1670, a nearly seven-fold increase in 70 years driven by commercial wealth, religious tolerance that attracted skilled refugees, and the specific prosperity of the world's first modern financial capital. The tolerance was instrumental. Amsterdam accepted Jews expelled from Spain and Portugal, Huguenots expelled from France, and English dissenters, and received in return the commercial networks, financial expertise, and technical skills those communities carried. The specific intellectual consequence, Spinoza developed his philosophy in Amsterdam. Descartes lived and worked there for 20 years. Rembrandt painted there. Rembrandt's paintings, produced in Amsterdam between approximately 1631 and 1669, are the most specific visual evidence of the Golden Age's human character. The Night Watch, completed in 1642, depicts a civic militia company. Not a royal court, not a religious scene, but the specific ordinary civic pride of Amsterdam's self-governing commercial class. The anatomy lessons, the merchant portraits, the domestic interiors. Rembrandt's subjects are the people who ran the VOC, deposited money in the Wisselbank, and traded shares on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Dutch Golden Age painting is the visual record of the world's first bourgeois civilization, the first time in Western art history that the primary subjects of major painting were commercial people, rather than monarchs, saints, or mythology. Amsterdam's commercial supremacy lasted approximately 70 years, from approximately 1600 to 1672. When France invaded the Dutch Republic and the combination of French military pressure and English commercial competition began the specific process that transferred financial supremacy to London. The specific mechanism of Amsterdam's decline was structural rather than catastrophic. England adopted Dutch financial innovations. The Bank of England was founded in 1694, explicitly modeled on the Wisselbank, and combined them with a larger population, a larger domestic market, and the specific advantages of Atlantic geography for the 18th century trade that followed the 17th century spice trade. Amsterdam did not fall. It was outscaled. The institutions it invented moved to a city with more territory behind them. Amsterdam's specific contemporary position, a city of approximately 900,000 people, the second largest city in the Netherlands by population, the primary financial and cultural center of a country of 17 million, reflects the specific trajectory of a city that invented a civilization and was then outscaled by it. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange still exists as Euronext Amsterdam, part of the Pan-European Exchange. ASML, the Dutch semiconductor equipment company headquartered near Amsterdam, produces the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines that manufacture every advanced semiconductor chip on Earth, making the Netherlands once again the holder of a specific technological monopoly in a critical global supply chain. The chip monopoly of 2026 and the spice monopoly of 1602 are the same Dutch story. Geographic constraint producing institutional innovation, producing commercial dominance in one specific critical technology. Amsterdam's Canal District, the Grachtengordel, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2010, is one of the most perfectly preserved 17th century urban environments on Earth. The four concentric canals, Herengracht, Keizersgracht, Prinsengracht, and Singel, were planned and built between 1613 and 1665 as part of a deliberate urban expansion project that remains one of the most sophisticated pieces of urban planning in history. The canal houses that line them, approximately 1,600 in the UNESCO protected zone, their stepped or bell-shaped gables each slightly different from the neighbors, their facades leaning slightly forward to allow furniture to be hoisted through the upper windows, using the hooks still visible above every door. The city is simultaneously a living neighborhood and the best preserved commercial city of the 17th century. Amsterdam's bicycle infrastructure, approximately 850 kilometers of dedicated cycle paths within a city of approximately 219 square kilometers, is the most sophisticated urban cycling network in the world and the most visited urban transport model by city planners globally. Approximately 63% of Amsterdam residents use a bicycle as their primary daily transport. The city has approximately 900,000 bicycles, more bicycles than residents. The specific political history, Amsterdam's cycling culture, was not natural. It was the product of specific political decisions made in the 1970s, when Amsterdam citizens protested automobile infrastructure that was destroying the city's historic character. The choice to build cycling infrastructure rather than motorway infrastructure was a political choice that produced one of the world's most livable and most studied urban transport systems. Amsterdam's specific lesson for the cities that built the World Series is the demonstration that geographic constraint, the swamp, the sea level, the absence of natural resources, can produce institutional innovation of extraordinary consequence when the constrained community invests collectively in shared solutions. The Dutch water management system produced the organizational culture that produced the joint stock company. The joint stock company produced the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange produced the institutional template for every equity market on Earth. The Wisselbank produced the institutional template for every central bank on Earth. Every corporation that has ever issued shares, every investor who has ever bought them, every central bank that has ever provided liquidity, all operating within an institutional architecture that Amsterdam built in one extraordinary decade, because a people in a swamp had learned that collective investment in shared infrastructure was the only way to survive. The Amsterdam of 2026 preserves its 17th century commercial genius in its contemporary institutional character. The specific tradition of pragmatic collective problem solving applied to 21st century challenges. The Netherlands' approach to water management in the era of climate change. Not just maintaining the dike system but redesigning it. Living with water strategies that turn flood risk into urban design opportunity. The Dutch pension fund system, one of the world's most sophisticated, providing universal coverage through collective investment structures that echo the VOC's original risk distribution logic. The Netherlands' agricultural sector, the world's second largest food exporter, despite having a land area comparable to the state of West Virginia, achieved through intensive technological innovation applied to severe geographic constraint. The Dutch story has one plot: the constraint produces the innovation produces the dominance. Amsterdam's contribution to the cities that built the World Series completes the series' opening argument across 3 episodes. Venice demonstrated that geographic advantage combined with institutional innovation produces commercial dominance, and that removing the geographic advantage can end the dominance even when the institutions remain extraordinary. Baghdad demonstrated that intellectual preservation is itself a form of institutional achievement, and that physical destruction cannot destroy ideas that have been sufficiently dispersed. Amsterdam demonstrates that geographic constraint, the absence of natural advantage, can produce institutional innovation more durable than geographic advantage, because the constraint forces collective investment in shared solutions that outlast any individual monopoly. The 3 cities share one pattern: the constraint, the innovation, the consequence, and the legacy that outlasts both. 900,000 wooden piles, a swamp below sea level, the world's first stock market, the world's first central bank, the most valuable company in history, a spice trading firm in a Dutch canal, tulip mania, the world's first speculative bubble, Rembrandt painting the world's first bourgeois civilization, 900,000 bicycles, ASML holding the world's most critical semiconductor monopoly. The constraint that produced the windmill produced the stock certificate, produced the semiconductor machine. The Dutch story has one plot, and it is still running. The series continues next episode with Carthage, the city that Rome had to destroy because it was winning. A North African city that controlled the Western Mediterranean for 3 centuries, produced the greatest military commander in history, and came within one tactical decision of ending Rome before Rome ended it. The Punic Wars. Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants. The specific phrase Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed, that Cato the Elder used to end every Senate speech regardless of the topic, and what it means that the winning side wrote the history. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the story doesn't end here, it evolves. Amsterdam built the financial architecture of the modern world. The architecture is still running. The city is still cycling. The windmills are still turning. The series continues.